We're talking today about our Yachting the Turkish Mediterranean program scheduled for next September of 2024. And you guys will be the lucky ones in the sense that we have a group of your members who are doing basically the exact same program next month. We're very excited about it. And so because we're going to be running this again next year, as I always say to members, there's always little changes, improvements, things we do from one year to the next in my constant strive to create the ultimate travel experiences. Just a couple quick words, because I see there's a few members, names I don't recognize, about Wheel and Anchor. Our vision, our motto is about bringing travelers together. What that means, when I've been organizing trips for Canadians for more than 30 years, I've seen everything. I've done everything from individuals to groups of up to 4,000 people. And the best experiences, if you think about your own travel experiences, is when you travel with people who have a bit of a like-minded sense of travel. And that means different things to different people because we are all different and we all want to see and experience different things and in different ways. But there is a commonality to that. It's embodied in our Traveler's Creed. And it's like that soft touch, inquisitive, wanting to understand and learn about the culture and ask questions, but also not be too belligerent about it or too, how shall I say, just impolite or disrespectful. And, we've all traveled around the world. We've all looked at everybody else who's traveling around the world. And I know sometimes you cringe. And so our objective is to bring a bunch of people together who enjoy each other's companies and don't cringe in those moments. So, and so obviously in doing that, our goal is to become well-traveled, and well-traveled means going to interesting off the beaten track places. I was just reading the article the other day about over-tourism in Europe and cities telling people not to come anymore. And, listen, we all want to visit the London, Paris, Rome, Amsterdams of the world, the Venice, and so on. And yet there is so much more to experience out there that gives us a deeper understanding that's beyond what what you see at the normal sort of tourist traps. And, tourist traps are tourist traps for a reason, but the world has so much more to offer. And so that's our goal, is to show you a little bit of that and bring you interesting programs like this one here. So joining me today, of course, my amazing team, Paula Sarnik, who you know already. Paula is...
Hello, everyone.
is one of our two core frontline team who gets to talk to all the members, since I only get to talk to people from time to time when I'm on a trip, but always glad to hear from you. But Paula and Barb are the ones who answer all your questions and get you signed up for our trips. Yeah, that's the person who answers the phone, although we just changed our system now. So now when you call in, you'll get a recording. We had to do it. But you just press 1 and you just press 2 and you get Paula. So she's not far away. Anyway, today's agenda is all about Turkey. And we're going to see the bustling, vibrant parts like Istanbul and Bodrum, and then we're going to see some quiet, out of the way places. That's the whole point of doing the Turkish Mediterranean by way of a private gulet. So I will show you this map one more time, at least one more time during the presentation, because there's a lot of bits to it. But obviously we know where Turkey sits, obviously here in the eastern part of the Mediterranean Sea, between the Mediterranean Sea and the Black Sea. And of course, Turkey is predominantly in Asia, because the line goes right down this Bosphorus Strait here, which goes from the Black Sea into the Sea of Marmara and then subsequently into the Mediterranean. So most of Turkey is over here in Asia. But of course, this little chunk on the other side of the Bosphorus is technically in the continent of Europe, and Istanbul sits on that strait, on the Strait of Bosphorus, and we will be staying. We'll be landing there in Istanbul and spending the first 4 nights. More, if you'd like it. Istanbul is an incredible city. I'll tell you about it in a second. First 4 nights there. We're going to then go overland, which is, again, a bit unusual, but you're going to see some of the backcountry. And I'll tell you, the first part of when you come out of Istanbul here along the eastern shore of the Sea of Marmara, it's very industrial. I mean, Istanbul is a giant, massive city. I mean, we all know that Turkey has really risen as a European economic power. And so you see a lot of, the real Istanbul, the commercial industrial parts as you come out, and then we get into the countryside. We're going to stop here in Bursa before making our way to Ayvalık, which is here on the Aegean Sea, across from the island of the Greek island of Lesbos, which is this one here. So we'll spend a few nights in there, getting to know a part of Turkey that is, again, off the beaten track. Certainly, as far as most North American travelers are concerned, they don't generally come here, but it's very picturesque, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a couple minutes. From there, we again overland. So we have two fairly long transport days, but you'll see some of the countryside that most don't see, because most people will fly straight down to Bodrum from Istanbul. We're going to do it overland. We're going to stop at Ephesus, which is a must. And then we're going to end up in Bodrum for a night before we get on our gulet. And our gulet is going to be taking us in through this whole area in the western part of Turkey on the Mediterranean, this amazing coastline, which is full of bays and peninsulas and islands, and it is spectacularly beautiful. And so over the course of a week, we're going to sail from Bodrum around in through all these islands and bays, and we will end up then in Dalaman, which will be our disembarkation point. From here, we fly then back to Istanbul for one more night before we fly back home. So that is the program overall. And so let me give you a few of the highlights day by day. And oops, I just dropped that. And then, we'll go from there. So as I say, first thing, arriving into Istanbul. These days, Turkey is quite accessible. Turkish Airlines, I love. I'm not here to plug any particular airlines, but they are great. Definitely a notch above our national carrier. Flies from Toronto at the moment 6 days a week, and from Vancouver 3 days a week directly to Istanbul and into a brand new airport. It is, wow, huge, amazing. It is about a good hour outside the city. So we'll fly into Istanbul, and Turkish Airlines is Star Alliance. So it's got agreements with Air Canada if you're flying in from other cities across the country, and we'll arrive in Istanbul. And Istanbul, if you haven't visited before, you'll go and you'll probably say, I need to go back. It is a mammoth city. We are going to be focusing on the most interesting parts from a visitor standpoint, because when you drive in from the airport, as I say, just like when we're driving out at the end, you pass through a lot of it's like driving from Pearson Airport into downtown Toronto, or from YVR into downtown Vancouver. Pass through the nicest neighborhoods from a touristic standpoint. We're going to be staying right down here in the area called Sultanahmet, which is a peninsula between the Golden Horn and the Strait of Bosphorus. And so from here, you're really walking distance to the absolute sort of the top things to see: the Blue Mosque, the Hagia Sophia, Topkapi Palace. All of these different monuments, buildings, mosques, and so on, not to mention the Grand Bazaar and so on, are all in this area. So because it's a long flight, we don't do a heck of a lot the first day. We let you arrive, settle in. I know if it's me, I'm immediately off to a Turkish hammam because I think going to a local spa is a good way to sort of combat the jet lag. But then the second day, we'll get right into a tour, which is going to be quite a bit on foot. The best way to see the Sultanahmet area is on foot. And so it does sit up on a bit of a hill. So as I say, there's, we definitely do some walking. And here we are going to visit Hagia Sophia itself. A fascinating history just in this building alone, because it was, of course, built back in the 4th century as a church. But then, of course, the Byzantines came along, and then they turned it into a mosque, and then they turned it into a museum, and then and it was a museum actually until very recently. And the Turkish president recently decided he didn't want it to be a museum anymore. He wanted to be a mosque again. So now Hagia Sophia, after all these centuries, has turned back into a mosque. So an interesting story there. And again, this is what I like. I mean, we read a lot about Turkey in the media these days, all the things that are going on, what the president is up to, and sort of the whole dynamic in the country, because it really is, from when I first went to Turkey some 20 years ago, it has changed in dramatic proportions. We'll visit these underground cisterns again, also from back in the 16th century. Phenomenal architecture when you consider it was basically a water tank for many centuries. And on this day as well, of course, Istanbul, famous for the Grand Bazaar, which is this massive market selling everything under the sun. In the meantime, it's become a little bit touristically oriented, but you still get all of the smells and sights and sounds of and piles of spices and baklava and all this stuff stacked up. And it's super easy to get lost in the Grand Bazaar, but as I say, in the end of the day, you could walk back to the hotel. It's a bit of a long walk, but you could walk back, or you can just hop in a taxi if. But again, an incredible experience. Our next day, we're going to set out and take the load off for a little bit and go for a cruise on a private vessel that we've chartered right on the Bosphorus. And the Bosphorus in itself is quite significant because this, of course, is the sea link between the Black Sea and the Mediterranean and the rest of the world. So again, if you watch the news recently, everything that's going on in Russia and the Ukraine, all those ships carrying grain from Russia and the Ukraine pass basically through the middle of Istanbul, down the Bosphorus. So as I say, it puts everything in a global perspective into context as we cruise along on the Bosphorus with, as we go upstream towards the Black Sea, we have Europe on the left, Taksim, all of the modern districts of the European side of Istanbul, and on the right-hand side we have Kadıköy and all of the Asian side of Istanbul. So this will be a highlight for sure. We'll stop as well on the Asian side for a bite of lunch, and then there'll be lots of time as well to do a little bit of shopping, wandering around. There's so many bits to Istanbul. I almost suggest, if you're considering coming on this trip, even at the end, booking in a few extra days, because even 4 days there, while you cover off the main bits, it doesn't really even do the city justice. There's so much to take in Istanbul. Our next day, we're going to then head down to the Spice Bazaar, which is actually adjacent to the Grand Bazaar. Super cool. I mean, you'll almost want to buy a bunch of spices, except that, of course, you have a whole trip ahead of you. So you're not going to drag them along all through Turkey. But we'll spend some time wandering through that. We'll get on a local ferry. We'll cross again the Bosphorus. And we'll end up in Kadıköy once more, which is on the Asian side. And we'll spend some time wandering around the markets there. It's neat because it's largely vehicle free. So it's a little bit more comfortable to walk around, a fantastic market, and just cool to be enjoying a little bit of the Asian side. Most of the touristic focus of Istanbul is on the European side of the Bosphorus, but it's good to get that flavor. I mean, in a way, you don't notice anything different because it's still all one big city, but it's just kind of neat. And then we'll head back across again to the European side, to Sultanahmet, which is where we're staying for the rest of the day. And again, we've allowed for ample time for you to go and just enjoy wandering around Istanbul, Istiklal Street, which is off of Taksim Square, which is across the Golden Horn. So on the other side of this little bay that separates on the European side of Istanbul. So many great things. Anyway, I'm going to stop talking about that because I could go on about Istanbul forever. We will then depart Istanbul overland by our private mini coach. And then, as I say, we're going to go down around here, and it's going to be the first 2 hours roughly, and we're going to hit Bursa, which is actually the first capital of the Ottoman Empire from way back centuries ago. So it's an amazing stop. And then on our way on to Ayvalık. So as I mentioned, in Bursa, we'll see this incredible mosque and some other buildings relating to the period of the Ottomans way back when. Have lunch here in Bursa before making our way down to Ayvalık, which is a lovely spot. As I say, it's I'm just going to go back to again here on the Aegean Sea, looking out to the island of Lesbos. There's a whole archipelago. There's about 300 islands here around Ayvalik. We're going to be staying on one of them called Kunda Island, which is full of markets, and it's known for its fish and seafood. And again, you won't have heard of this because, as I say, most tourism is around Istanbul, or goes down to Bodrum, Dalaman, Fethiye. This is where all of the summer beach resorts and so on are. They, of course, exist along here. They're just not as popular. And so you are in a bit of this off the beaten track part of Turkey. And so from Ayvalik, where we're going to spend 3 nights, we'll get a bit of a sense of the region. We're going to head up into the mountains, up to the so-called Kozak Plateau. So we're going to ascend up to about 500 meters above sea level. And this is, again, where we step back in history, so to speak. We will come across villages where you have the descendants of the nomadic Turkmen, or the Yoruk folks that used to roam this region, again, throughout the centuries. And in fact, a lot of them still subscribe to the Alevi religion, which is related to Islam, and yet it's different because they are egalitarian. So everybody is equal. And if you think about that in terms of the context of the politics and the religious politics that exist in Turkey today and throughout much of the Islamic world, it's interesting that these folks are still able to sort of survive and push through. They're also Shia, as opposed to Turkey, which is largely Sunni Muslim. So it's interesting to find these little enclaves and understand a little bit about the plight of the people. We'll also visit winemaking. This is a winemaking region of Turkey, and I don't know how many Turkish wines you've tasted. Probably not so many, but they make some pretty amazing wines. They've got a lot of the grape varieties. It's not native to Turkey. Most of the grapes in Turkey have been brought in from France, but nevertheless, they do have a particularly defined character. We'll obviously visit the area around Ayvalik itself, which has a whole number of Greek Orthodox churches that are sort of spotted around. So you see in the picture here a mosque, and next to it, it looks like, you can't see it quite there, but there's, as I say, there's churches all around the town, because of course this area was occupied over the years by the Greeks, by Greek Orthodox, by the Ottomans, by the Byzantines. Like, it was all, as you can well imagine here, as a trading port on the Aegean Sea. So we'll really get to enjoy this. We'll go out for a wonderful dinner on Kunda Island, where we're staying. And as I say, you'll really appreciate this side of Turkey that is, you're not going to be surrounded by tourists from all parts of the world. Turkish tourists for sure, maybe from other parts of Europe, but again, that's part of the beauty of it. So after a few days there, we then continue our journey down south, heading towards Bodrum, which is where we're going to embark on our gulet. And on the way, we stop at Ephesus. Ephesus, if you are not familiar with it already, the Temple of Artemis used to be one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Most of it is in ruins. Some of the buildings here are still intact, like you see. And this is, in terms of archaeological significance, it's right up there with Petra in Jordan. It's right up there with the Great Wall of China as one of the greatest historical sites that you can find. This is a must-see stop. It will be busy because most cruise ships that cruise the Mediterranean, the Aegean Sea, stop here at Ephesus. But as I say, well worth it, and perfectly timed, because it'll break up the journey between Ayvalik and Bodrum. And then on the last leg as well, we'll have a nice stop at this Lake Bafa, which is a mythical lake that is just outside of Bodrum. So we'll break up the journey a bit. It's about, in total, around 5 hours of driving, 5 to 6 hours, depending on traffic and so on. That is, as I say, bisected by a nice stop in Ephesus. We'll overnight then in Bodrum itself, in a hotel outside of the main part of Bodrum. Bodrum is a very cool town, but as it's very touristy. I'll be quite honest with you, it is probably the major yacht port in the western part of Turkey, of the Turkish Mediterranean. So we've picked a nice hotel away from the city center because it's kind of loud. A lot of party goers, particularly from the UK, that hang out in Bodrum. It's a cool town. I mean, it's got a very young, vibrant, nightlife focused vibe to it. But as I say, there's lots of beautiful places in and around Bodrum. You'll enjoy staying there, and you'll enjoy particularly that we're not staying at the center of Bodrum. We'll have a lovely dinner, and then we will embark on our vessel the next day, where we're gonna spend the next 7 nights. And this is going to be amazing. So here pictured is the Turkish gulet, the Never a Queen. This is the vessel that we have chartered for this year and what we fully intend to charter next year. But because of the way they structure their contracts, we can't know for sure until a little bit later for sure that it's the Never a Queen. But we've looked at a number of vessels in the fleet. And so it'll be something, if it's not the Never Queen itself, it'd be something very similar. This is a luxury gulet. It is chartered exclusively for us with a total of 10 cabins on board and 7 crew members. So there'll be no more than, I think the maximum is about 16 members. I think that's what we have going this year. And of course, your Wheel and Anchor host. And you are well looked after on board this vessel. We have all meals included. So breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day, served in a beautiful format, either outside or of course inside as well. They've got lovely amenities on board the ship. This is really one of the nicer gulets, the nicest series of gulets in Turkey. We have both standard and we also have master staterooms. So there's, I think, 4 master staterooms and 6 regular staterooms. The master ones being fore and aft are quite a bit larger, but even the regular ones, as you can see, there's lots of room. We've picked a gulet where you can go around both sides of the bed. So it's comfy, it's luxe, it's a great way to travel. This is one of the master staterooms that you'll find, as I say, either fore or aft. So comfy accommodations. This is the way to do Turkey. Just a couple other things to mention about the experience on board. So as I say, it's all inclusive. We even have beverages, and I wouldn't say unlimited, but should be sufficient. Both alcoholic, non-alcoholic beverages, a selection of wines that we will have picked out. And various other beverages, all part of the program. So that's really nice. It's just, you can really just enjoy and relax as we're sailing around the Mediterranean. They also have on board this, they've got a jet ski, they've got a boat that you can go water skiing behind if you feel really adventurous. They've got a canoe. I think they might even have a paddleboard, but don't quote me on that. So they've got a bunch of stuff that you can enjoy swimming and being in the Aegean. And even in this time of the year in September, in fact, September and early October is the best time to go here because you're way past the main tourist season. The water of the Mediterranean is still warm, usually still 23, 24 at this time of the year. So great conditions, and it's warm, but it's not super hot like it has been in recent days in Southern Europe. So that gives you a little bit of a flavor of the vessel itself. As I say, 7 nights will be on there, and we are going to be sailing, I should have stuck the map in here again, around all of these bays and peninsulas and archipelago that is in the southwest corner of the Turkish Mediterranean between Bodrum and Dalaman. I'm just going to touch on a few of the ports. We put in the disclaimer that, of course, everything is a bit, weather and seas permitting. This time of the year, it's usually pretty stable, but also because it's our own vessel, between yourselves as the members on the trip and our host and the captain of our ship, we might say, let's go over there, or let's go over there, or let's stop here for a few minutes. We can do all that. And that's kind of what makes the trip a little bit fun. So just to touch on a couple of the highlights that we're going to do along the way. So we're going to visit the Datça Peninsula, which is right across from Bodrum when we sail out, be the first place that we stay overnight. And again, here you see what my notes are on Dacia. I've been to some of these ports before. I haven't been to all of the villages, but it has a lovely little harbor that we're going to moor in for the night. And as I say, you come from the hecticness, the vibe of Bodrum, and then you end up in some of these little villages that, you know, one is more picturesque than the next. There'll be swim stops all throughout the day. The program is loose, but we do have things that you want to see along the way. When you get into Benchik Bay, for example, we go from sort of a rocky mixed coastline to all of a sudden these amazing pine forests, which contrasted with the blue of the Aegean. I remember the first time when I sailed in Turkey, I was like, I never thought the Mediterranean could be as blue as it is, but it really is that. And so this, you know, this second day sailing into this Benchik Bay with this incredible blue water and the pine forests and this lovely village. In various villages, we have stops where we have somebody to take us around if there are any sites of particular interest. All of them have Greek ruins, Ottoman ruins. They all have some interesting sort of tidbit to them. Some of them are quieter than others. But as I say, as we move along from west to east, we'll come into Hisaronu, and you can see here that the landscape changes from being very more thick pine forests into a very rocky sort of landscape. And here in Ceres Bay, as you're sailing in, the water is so clear, and there's all these shipwrecks that have been there for decades and centuries. Most of the artifacts have been lifted and are in a museum in Bodrum, but you'll still be able to see some things if you're snorkeling around on board. And there's an amazing Rhodian fort as well, because from here, if you go across out into the Mediterranean, you hit Rhodes. In fact, when I last did this trip, we sailed over to the Greek islands, but there's so much on the Turkish side, you don't even need to go over there. That's a whole separate trip. We will then go into Ekincik and Dalian Bay, where here again you can see some ruins carved right into the side of the mountain that you can see here. It's really quite amazing. The Lycian rock tombs are here as well. So we get to have both a leisurely sail with an incredible scenery and swimming and leisure time, but also, again, getting tidbits of the history that we'll find all along the coastline here. We'll sail then in around a big peninsula into the Gulf of Fethiye, where some of the most beautiful coastline and bays can be found. We're going to go in here to Kayakoy, which is actually a ghost town that they've now turned into an open air museum. And you see the remnants of the buildings and how people lived and all the rest of it. It's really kind of a cool little visit. We also go into Tersane, which is the largest island in the Gulf of Fethiye. And here they have tombs on the floor of the sea that you can visit. And there's also, as you can see, the picture, little lighthouse up here. And so these are the kinds of places that we'll stop. We will for the most part, anchor offshore somewhere in a quiet, secluded little bay. Sometimes we might anchor in a town. It really just sort of depends on the whim of the captain, not to mention the guests. If people say, we'd like to go into town and wander around for the evening, again, there's the flexibility there to kind of go with the flow and really take in and enjoy this amazing coastline in the way that you feel best. So I just touched on a few of the highlights. Again, there's so many aspects to it, but again, it's an amazing program that combines both the cultural highlights of Western Turkey as well as this amazing gulet cruise. We'll fly from Dalaman, which is where we disembark the ship, back to Istanbul. And we'll have one more night at a hotel near the airport is what we've done in the program, because those who are flying onward or back home, if they're catching the Turkish airline flights in the morning, then it's very convenient. But again, my suggestion would be tack on a few extra nights, go into Istanbul proper, and really, see another side of the city if you have the time and the desire and the interest. So that is pretty much our program. We will obviously fly back from Istanbul airport, as I say, And from Istanbul, there's lots of other places in the region to visit if you are thinking about going out on your own. Oh, I should mention at this point, because a couple of members asked me about Cappadocia. And so we are tentatively planning to have an extension program to Cappadocia. So if you don't know where Cappadocia is, if you head east across Turkey towards Ankara, towards the capital, in sort of the central highlands, Cappadocia is incredibly beautiful rock formations that is best known for the hot air ballooning. On any given day, 100 to 150 balloons go up and see this incredible landscape of Cappadocia. So we are, just because members had asked for it, and we are an organization that responds to our members, we are looking into putting together a little 3 or 4 night extension program. And so if that's something that would interest you, but at the same time you want to get your name on board, you can basically fill in the booking form. You can join us on the trip. We'll hold you a spot, and the Cappadocia thing will just take us another week or two probably to get put to bed. So just wanted to mention that in case anybody's on the webinar that was like, let's go to Cappadocia, because I think it's worth a visit. So I'll just touch on a couple of the logistical details about this program. As I mentioned, it's going to be happening from the 13th to the 29th of September next year. So on a perfect time to go. Anytime between the middle of September and the middle of October is, as far as I'm concerned, the best time to travel to the Turkish Mediterranean. All of the pricing, again, will be in your program itinerary, but I just stick it up on the screen here. We do have a early bird booking bonus for those who sign up for the program soon. As I mentioned, the program includes lovely hotels, all the guiding, breakfast every day, and either lunch or dinner for we've got 9 nights of accommodation. And again, I won't go through the whole list because I think you pretty much know what it is. Oops. Sorry, my webinar, my PowerPoint is acting up. And so, yeah, that's basically all the inclusions that you go through in great detail. And again, on board ship, we have 3 meals a day. We have tea at 5 o'clock every day, even included, cocktails, wine, beer. When I say cocktails, we don't have like an entire full bar. That's just not logistically possible, but we have beverages available. And in fact, we ask our members before the trip if they have anything they really want. So if you're a G&T fan at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, we can definitely make sure that's on board for you. And various, as they touring and so on along the trip, along the coast in the Mediterranean. So the only thing that is in addition is your airfare and the e-visa to get into Turkey, which is very easy to do online, and of course insurance, all of which our team can help you with. And airfare here into Istanbul, just to give you a sense, I think at the moment it's actually a little bit more reasonable than that, but we just for budgeting purposes, it just gives you an idea of what economy class airfare is from either the East Coast or the West Coast of Canada to get into Istanbul. And as I mentioned, we do have an early booking bonus of $200 a person, and that is because we have a special arrangement to lock down the ship. If we get a bunch of bookings right off the bat, then they give us a little bit of better deal than if we book after the 1st of September. So we want to pass that on to you. And now it's time for questions and answers. So of course, you may think of something, or you may have a very personal question you want to ask. Just drop Paula or Barb a note. Barb is on holiday this week and next, just so you know. So Paula's manning the fort. In the meantime, drop her an email. She'll be happy to help you answer any questions. And questions and
We've
answers.
got a bunch come here.
Yoki.
Yes. So we'll work through the questions that have come in. Ella was asking if there is snorkeling gear on board.
That is a good question. And I believe there is snorkeling gear on board. My advice always, if you are a snorkeler, is go and get your own equipment, because snorkeling gear, whenever it's included, wherever it's included, is always kind of the lowest quality stuff. So we will double check with you whether they provide it there. But my honest advice is, spend $100, get a decent mask and snorkel. They have those full face ones now, which are awesome. And they don't generally have that kind of stuff. If they have it, it's, yeah. But we will get back to, is it Ella? Ella.
I'll check. Yes, I'll check into that for certain. I know I travel with my own snorkel and mask, and then if there's fins, I'll use those locally.
If
But
you're a snorkeler,
yeah,
it's honestly worth it. If you're somebody who's going to do it once just for fun, okay, you can deal with what they have, but I do recommend it.
yeah, perfect. Another question here has come in. If are all standard rooms on the gulet one bed only, how do we accommodate two people that wish not to share a bed? There are two cabins that are twin, that have two beds in them.
Yeah,
So the answer to that one.
exactly.
Another question
If you're
here
a
was
twin and you
asked
want
if,
a twin, it's best to book early.
yeah, yeah. Lee's asked if there are shaded areas on the deck of the gulet.
Yeah, there's shaded areas inside and out. And so they pull up one of those sail light canopies or whatever. So yeah, there's you can definitely sit outside without being in the blasting sun all day long.
Perfect. I have another member that has asked if they wanted to share a room on the gulet but have their own room on land. Would that be possible?
That is
we
possible.
can look into that.
Yeah, we can look into that. I don't have a number right off the bat, but we have done that and offer that on other programs, and it is definitely possible. And it definitely makes the single price more attractive. So if whoever it is, if you could just email Paula with your interest, and we will quote you a price on that. So anybody that wants to do single rooms on land but shared on the ship, just to save a few bucks, absolutely, we can do that for you.
Perfect.
We didn't talk about the weather, although, oh sorry, because I was just
yeah
thinking, let me
someone
just
has asked.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
That's okay. We've got delays, obviously.
Yeah.
Someone had asked about packing for this trip. So A, I think touching on weather, and B, touching on the size of luggage that would be,
Yeah,
like whether we, reduce luggage sizes.
yeah. So
boat.
weather in the Mediterranean at in September is usually what I would consider to be perfect. So days typically are in the mid-20s. Can be cooler in the evening, so it's definitely, particularly when you're on the water, it's definitely good to have something to just sort of pull over, a light sweater or a light windproof jacket or something, because you can get winds on the Mediterranean as well, and that's what tends to make it cool. But you're talking about the kind of weather that we would get in September here, but a few degrees warmer. So the Mediterranean is usually, as I say, pretty reliably in the mid-20s. In September. Not much rain at this time of the year is normal, but we don't like to make any assertions about weather these days, because the weather tends to be all over the place. In terms of packing, it's casual. It is Turkey, so it's a Muslim country. So therefore, when you visit the mosques and so on, I mean, you do need to be covered up, but you can do that with something light. A sarong is always a fallback on that. You don't need to bring tons of extra luggage for that. We're not doing anything formal on board. We have the boat to ourselves. We don't have to impress anybody. So you can pack pretty light. Because it is a boat, it's spacious, but I tend to recommend soft luggage. It's just easier to stow in your cabin, right? If you have only a big hard suitcase, if you bring just one, I'm sure we'll find a place for it. It's not, this gulet is quite spacious and comfy, but it's just easier, so that for the crew to not have to store hard luggage. If 16 people come and we have 16 big hard suitcases, it's so I just suggest soft luggage. You don't need that much stuff anyway.
Perfect. And then another common question with our water-based programs is the movement, which I think you also touched on, but maybe good to reiterate.
Yep, absolutely.
For seasickness.
This is a yacht, it's not a cruise ship, so some motion is unavoidable. We are mostly sailing in this archipelago and adjacent, so we're not going to get 20-foot waves. We're not even going to get, unlikely you'll even get 6-foot wave. I mean, but if you get a bit of a wind and you pass an open area, there are going to be times when there's going to be some movement aboard the ship. Again, my experience was when I did it and sailed across to Greece and back, was that it was practically dead calm. I mean, it was, I get some movement. If you are susceptible, my advice is to anyone going on any kind of a trip that is on a smaller vessel, whether it's with us to Turkey or to Croatia or any kind of a smaller vessel, if you haven't been on a smaller vessel before, see if you can find somebody this summer and go out in their sailboat for a couple of hours or something and just see how you feel. It's obviously more stable than a small little, 25 or 30 foot sailboat that you might find in Lake Ontario. But there's inevitably some motion.
Perfect. And one other question, what is it like getting on and off the boat in the different ports? We got gangplanks, or we jumping in the water up to our knees?
No, there is a gangplank for sure. I mean, we will be at anchor, as I mentioned, probably more often than not, as opposed to, so it means disembarking the sailboat into a tender, which is basically like a small Zodiac boat. And so you'll have to sort of climb down a small ladder, but I mean, it's directly adjacent to the boat. So it's for anybody who's reasonably able-bodied. If you have, more significant mobility issues, it will be a challenge, but also because of the walking that is necessary to enjoy, these towns and cities and so on and so forth. But for most people, it's not a problem to get on and off.
Perfect. That's everything that I've received so far, but members can definitely give us a call or an email.
Please do. I think this is an amazing trip. We may update some things if there are any changes after this year's trip to Turkey. I don't anticipate any. It's I think at this point going according to the plan, but we'll certainly update any members. And we sold out this year's trip almost shortly after we introduced it. So I suspect, again, the interest, because it's not something you find every day. It took us quite a bit to find this gulet owner. So definitely get in touch. Definitely let us know if you have any questions, and please come. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I look forward to welcoming you on the trip. Paula, you posted in there a couple of more webinars that are coming up next week. Our long-awaited, again, trip to Egypt, since the one this spring is already sold out. So Egypt, Morocco, and Caucasus, all for the fall of next year. Those programs are coming out next week. So if you're interested, join us for the webinars. As I say, Egypt, Morocco, and Caucasus, which is Georgia and Armenia. Paula put the information in there. And otherwise, if I don't see you on another webinar, I hope you see. Hope we see you soon, and continue to enjoy summer, which has been pretty decent here in Ontario. I'm quite glad to be back home. Take care, and we'll see you all again very soon. Bye-bye for now.